Yeah, that's funny, man.
Well,
You
hey, I
got
mean, we gotta
yours.
do what we gotta do, right?
Right.
You know, people will
Um,
laugh at stuff that's bootstrapped, but it's better to be
right.
frugal than up to your eyeballs in debt and struggling to make a thing work. And you get mad at yourself, your wife, your significant other, your children, because you're all living with debt.
Exactly. You know, oh, before we really get going, check your mic location because you sounded a little echoey.
Echoing?
Uh,
How about
yeah,
now?
that's better. That's
Okay.
better. All right. Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of debt, I was gonna ask you, do you do you really, I guess, subscribe to the thought, the concept of paying off your debt first before making any steady investment? Like anything, I mean, outside of like retirement, something that your company may have, would you say a person should just pay off all their debt first before they start investing in like mutual funds and things like that?
Well, statistically, what investors would recommend and MD would recommend is that you use a certain percentage of your income to invest for your retirement. So people would argue that time value of money is you're losing out to invest and through by doing. But with the way he talks about getting out of debt, he talks about what's called gazelle intensity. So if you're
Okay,
attacking
hold
your
on,
debt,
James. Your mic is still going out a little bit,
hmm,
and I want to make sure we can hear it on film. Because
hmm,
if I'm having a hard time hearing it, I'm not sure.
all right,
Yeah,
well, let's try this.
Coco.
This is definitely coffee. And we're
Sure,
back.
sure it is. What's up, my brother?
Well, what I was saying was is that it's important to understand a school of thought that you're not going to really lose out on as much money as you think you are investing by focusing on your debt. But whichever path you choose is fine because
Mhm.
when you do the math on it, it's think about it this way. If you're paying 20% on interest on a credit card and you would normally contribute 7% of your income or whatever percentage that is, if you were to continue doing that, the contributing and the paying of the debt, well, on a long enough timeline, it's about the same amount of time, it's about the same amount of money. It's whichever is really more beneficial for you. Ultimately, it's more beneficial for you to be out of debt as fast as possible because
Right,
if you were to have a sudden life event or you were to take a new job, you would have the psychological, it wouldn't be as much on you psychologically. So
right.
I personally would think that, you know, if you're focused enough and you're intense enough, just go ahead and knock out the debt. If we're talking about $2,000, $3,000 worth of debt, knock out the debt. Go
Right.
ahead and do that, and then you can, build up your savings and then invest for
But
your
but
retirement.
but what if we're talking about $100,000 worth of debt?
All right. Well, this is all education purposes too. So you got to keep in mind, he's not saying not to invest in retirement, but just pause it. Just pause it.
Right.
So
Right.
again, that's your choice. If you're currently investing like 10%, well, drop it down to 1%. One.
Right.
If
Right.
you
Yeah.
feel like it gives you that safety net, then drop it down to a more of a minimum contribution. For like example, for Jill, she's investing 15. Me, I'm not at 15. I'm probably like 7.
Hmm.
So because I still got that car loan I want to pay off. Once that car
Right.
loan's paid off, I'm investing 15. So we're
Right.
doing, so it's 15% of combined income as one. So if you're
Right.
single, obviously it's just yours. But if it's combined, then it's. But again, it's understanding your numbers and your budget, and that's the important part is the burden of debt. Think about it this way: the less debt you're paying on, the more you can actually contribute to your own investing in your future as far as your business ventures or uh, stocks and bonds or anything like that. See, your cash
Right.
flow is a lot more so that you can invest into it versus if you're strapped down on debt, you're typically going to pay your average person, most people pay just the minimum on debt,
Right.
which again, you're robbing yourself of your strongest tool for your wealth building, which is your income.
Right. Right. Because you're having to pay off debt, so you've got less cash flow monthly, and if you're only paying that minimum, then you'll continue to have that less. Whereas if you were to go ahead and, as you're getting your income, getting some extra income in, go ahead and pay off that debt, then it would be more cash flow monthly. So I definitely get that aspect. And I think, as you were saying, is also kind of by preference, because if you put paying off debt and you put investing in mutual funds or whatever side by side, unless you've got a serious package from, let's say, your employer for 401k where they're matching or doing all kinds of stuff that really compounds that investment. If you're just talking about gaining about 8 to 10% on a mutual fund versus you're paying 15 to 20% interest on some debt, then if you look at them long term, 10,
You're losing.
15 years, yeah, and it's still, I was actually doing the numbers the other day, and it's not as different as you would think. It's like
Yep. Yep.
we're
And
talking about
that's,
$5,000, $10,000,
yep.
50, depending on
The
how
time
big your debt is.
is
Yeah.
the time side of it. Yeah. I mean, think about it. You think that you're losing out on the money, but you're not. You're not
Yeah.
losing out on that because again, once you're free of debt, you have a lot more options, a lot more abilities to choose and be creative with things and take a little bit more risk on. When you're
Right.
in debt, you can't afford to take on risk. You think
Right.
you can, but you're putting a burden on yourself that you don't realize that uh, you don't realize the subtle impact it has on you in turn. Now, let me point out another side of it. Now, let's say you're in debt, you're investing, and you've got $2,000 worth of debt, but you got $10,000 in savings.
Mm-hmm.
That's a completely different animal because at any given point in time, you can satisfy that debt and there's no pressure.
Right.
So, in essence, the leverage is a lot lower. So, again, in learning about Dave Ramsey and learning about in my career and working in banking and learning about my own path, I've would like people to understand that you're not bound by any one path. Like Dave would
Right.
say, I'm not mad at you. You do what you want to do. Well, same thing with me. You choose what path is right for you, but understand that debt is a loaded weapon. You're playing with a grenade that has its pin pulled, and
Right.
so you have to have measures in place to protect yourself. So if you're going to use debt, that's the way I look at it, then you should, if you don't have 100% down to pay for it all in cash, then I would recommend at a minimum you have 80%. You
Mm-hmm.
put 80% and make your loan to value 20%. And then and then if you can do that, make sure you have the liquidity behind it to pay it off if something comes up. Like so
Right.
let's say for example, you have like $10,000 loan, and I'm trying to do math this early in the morning, so forgive me on that one. On a $10,000 loan, 80% down, your loan is only 2,000. Okay, and you got, let's say you got 5 times that loan amount in your savings, 10,000. Anything happens, you can just pay that loan off, no problem.
Right.
But
Right.
that $2,000 loan, the payment on a $2,000 loan, it's a lot easier than making a payment on an $8,000 loan. And
Right.
again, if the math is too easy, it's like I can make that payment all day long. Put a zero behind it and see if it doesn't make you sweat a little bit at night. You know,
Right.
you know,
Right.
you get a $20,000 loan, and you ain't even breathing funny, and then put another zero behind it. Okay, let me know
Right.
if you start to feel a little bit of sweat. If you don't, if you get to a point where you're not sweating at all, then you're just a psychopath, and you shouldn't have any debt. You should stay away from debt. You know.
Right. 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 No doubt, no doubt, man. So yeah, you kind of, we'll digress. We'll come in for Atlanta, but you're kind of also talking a little bit now about net worth when you're talking about liquidity and
Yeah.
having assets that can help you pay off debt if need be. And I think it's just so important for individuals to understand those concepts of both net worth and cash flow. And
Well, I mean, if you don't mind, let's just kind of stay here for let's park for a little while.
okay,
So,
sure.
because it's hardly ever that we ever kind of delve into my realm, and I don't want to
Mhm.
put people to sleep. So, if you start going to sleep, then just you know, throw in say something or start snoring. Oh, but the way I like trying to help people understand is about their life is they've probably heard this before, but you're already a business in your life.
Mhm.
You're already the chef, cook, bottle washer, host, hostess, cashier, all that in your life already. So it's important to understand that you are your own corporation, you are your own business. And so it's also important to understand the verbiage and the terminology that banks use. And
Mhm.
these are terminal terms that are you'll find in the accounting world. Now, do you have to be an accountant? No. But is it important to understand what the word balance sheet means? Yes, absolutely. Because a
Mhm.
balance sheet is made up of, it's a mathematical formula. Your assets is equal to your liability plus your equity.
Mhm.
And so your assets is like what we were just talking about. It's something that you have, you own, and it's of value and it's positive. Liabilities is, it's a negative thing. It's something you pay
Mhm.
out to somebody. It's debt. It's that type of stuff. And your equity, which makes up that difference, that's the difference between your assets minus your liabilities. And already it's starting to like, oh God, no, no. So your income statement is what flows into your balance sheet. Okay. Now
Mhm.
you take that and you put alongside it, you go walk into a bank. What do you want? What will we normally ask you to do? Say, hey, I want a loan. What will we ask you normally to do? Before anything happens, what will we ask?
We asked for your uh bank statements, see your
Even
income,
before all that.
even before all that.
Uh-huh. What
Uh,
would we want you to do?
hmm. Well, before y'all run my credit and all that, what
Uh-huh.
would you want me to do?
Yes.
Let me think. Okay, I go in for a loan,
Yep.
and you want me to uh do a little dance because you can tell a
Yes.
lot about me from my dancing. Is
Yes.
that okay? Help me out, man. I know it's
Fill
gonna
out
be
the
like,
credit application.
oh yeah, okay,
Yeah. The most basic
right,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, the
But
most
see,
basic.
in that credit application, that has everything that you would see on a business too. Your balance sheet and your
Mhm.
income statement. First page of the credit application, your name, your social, where you work, how much you make, your income
Mhm.
statement. Second page, assets, liabilities, your personal financial statement of what you're worth, your checking accounts, your rent, your car payment, student loans, say. That's how the income statement and balance sheet are all connected together. And the
Right.
interesting thing about your income is it's your back door into the balance sheet.
Right.
So in underwriting, we understand how everything flows, and we can see, especially if we're doing business analysis, how a business can survive. There's what's called cash flow models. And what we look at is what's called cash flow coverage or debt service coverage. If
Mm-hmm.
it's within a certain ratio, we'll do it. So, yeah, at the end of the day, what I would hope for is that people understand when it comes to building your wealth, you can have debt, use it as a tool, or not use it as a tool. And for me, there's two different types of debt. There's self-lending debt, in which you take your own money and you create your own payment plan and pay yourself back. You have to be very, very disciplined to do it. You have to
Mm-hmm.
have an accountability partner, for lack of a better word, to hold you to it. If you pull something from savings and saying, okay, well, this is what I have to pay myself back every month. You have to have somebody saying, hey, did you pay that back? Did you? I mean, until you can get it into your head,
Right.
it's very easy to stop doing that. Or you borrow from a bank, or you just don't have debt at all. I
Right.
personally believe that self lending is a good path for people to build their wealth.
So
But
so
so
though
there's
what's
something that brought this up. Where did this come from?
well, I'll tell you in a sec. But what's interesting though is if you're gonna do the self-lending principle, before
Mm-hmm.
you have to have the discipline to pay yourself back, you have had to have the discipline to save enough too. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? So
yeah.
really,
Well, and also too, this is kind of goes into where if you want to get really biblical with it, I I am a billion% believer in tithing, billion
mm,
percent. And the Lord put this into me one day when I was teaching dollars and cents. You attended it one time, a few times,
mhm.
many times. I don't know how many times. Uh, you know, people have an issue with tithing. They stick to that 10% thing, right?
Mhm.
It's got to be that 10%. Whereas I know my own spiritual walk when it came to tithing, and I said, no, let it be the first. Let
Mhm.
it be the first 1%. If
Mhm.
you can handle 1%. If you can't handle 1% of your money, 0.5% of your money, your first 0.5%. And when you do this, it activates a principle, not just the spiritual side of it, but on a financial side. Because what do you have to do in order to tithe first? Your first of your paycheck. You
Right.
have to save. You are
Mhm.
inherently teaching yourself to save by tithing.
That makes sense. It's kind of like the same thing you mentioned Dave Ramsey earlier, the whole pay yourself first. And there's other folks that say that other,
Right.
I mean, it's like a common thought. But yeah,
But
so
you can't save if you don't have the discipline of saving.
right.
And it becomes inherent if you tithe. If
If
you
you tithe.
tithe, not only like but that's and again when that thought came to me, it was mind blowing. So you have to
Mm,
really chew on that for a while and really think about it because it's so
yeah,
inherent in the Christian belief system that people don't
right.
understand how big that actually is.
Yeah, that
Not
makes
only
sense. Yeah,
honoring something supernaturally, but you are genuinely teaching yourself how to save by doing
that's
this.
true.
Because
That's
how can
true.
you give something to the Lord first if you're not saving it for the
Right.
Lord? In essence,
Exactly.
you are
It's
showing yourself how to do it.
yeah, it's a sacrifice. It's psychological,
It
right?
is
So
very
because
psychological.
so once you got that down, you've really unlocked a skill,
Yeah,
really, yeah, the skill
it
of
is.
saving, being able
It
to
it is
sacrifice.
because you have to create a budget around it. Because you're
Right.
like, I don't understand why I'm still being going. overdraft. It was like, well, have you written down your numbers? Do you
Right.
know how much is actually
Right.
coming out? You know,
Right.
your costs such as food and uh, gas, those are going to be very variable things. They're going to go
Right.
fluctuate up and down. They're soft expenses,
Right.
not hard fixed expenses. But at the end of the day, this is a great episode because I don't know about you, but I'm awake now. I'm just like I just floated straight into like, you got me going. Here we go. I was like,
Well, let me answer your question from earlier. You asked me where did this all come from? Well, I think I told you I started doing what I've called results coaching. And so it's part of the refresh, refocus, rebuild framework. And it's
there it
just
is. There it
another
is.
service that we're doing. And it's actually a 40-day program. So it's 8 weeks
Ooh.
long. Bro, we're 2/3 the way done, thankfully. It's been a nice little, yeah, right, yeah. It's been a nice little journey. And not this past week, but the week before, you may remember in the book, well, you actually well, consulted with me or mentored me, or I asked you some advice on the financial chapter, and you gave me some insight on that and helped me round that chapter out. And
Mm-hmm.
so the planner also reflects that financial chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got to the week before last and we went through some of the aspects of the planner, the net worth and cash flow. And so I
Uh-huh.
wanted to go a little bit deeper
Mm-hmm.
than um than I had before. And so I started doing some research just about what were common suggestions for how much to save, and
Right.
how much we should be paying off
Right.
debt, and
Yeah, you probably
also,
heard about the debt snowball, the debt avalanche, 3 to 6 months worth of expenses, all that kind of stuff.
oh yeah, and I was familiar with that from the little bit that I had had read about, like Dave Ramsey stuff and everything.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
more so what I was focusing on was helping them kind of see the difference between, paying off the debt and paying or investing. And so what I did, the
Mm-hmm.
examples I used was like a debt, and it was different amounts, but let's say $30,000 debt that had 15% interest. And then I would say, okay, this person has $1,500
Mm-hmm.
that's disposable income they can use towards debt or use to invest in the mutual fund. And I did multiple examples of, like, this person paid 1,000 on debt, 500 mutual fund, 500 on debt, 1,000 mutual fund. Put all of it on debt, was able to pay it off. And I did all these
Three different
comparisons.
scenarios, huh?
Yeah,
Okay,
three
so
different
what
scenarios.
you find out? What you find out?
Man, well, ultimately, in all of the scenarios, it was actually more beneficial to pay off the debt first. And sometimes it would be only a difference of 3 or 4 thousand, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it'd be a difference of 9 or 10 thousand,
Yep.
which in the big scheme of things, like we were talking about, over 8 years or so,
Yep.
it's like, does it really? But I mean, I think so. It depends on what your goals are.
And it also depends on how old you are too.
Right, right.
And
Yeah.
as you get towards the end of your life, I would say, just from my personal experience of watching others age and get towards the end of their lives, and this is just me, I feel like a person should have at least 3 streams of income by
Mm-hmm.
the time they get towards the later years in life. You know, let's just assume Social Security is still there. That is not one stream of income is not going to be able to be enough to support you. It's Social Security, meaning it's securing a society. You
Right,
know,
right,
so you would want to have something like a maybe a Roth IRA, maybe a real estate investment property, or maybe a business that you still have ownership in. But on top of that, you would want one more stream of income so
right.
that you're not a burden on your family. Obviously, if you've raised your kids right, they're not going to think you be that way. But as a parent, you just don't want to be that, you know?
Right. And to that point, one of the cool things that we were able to work through was I found this well used formula that kind of just projects what your net worth should be based on age, considering
Mm,
um average average life expectancy, all that kind of stuff. And it was really cool. I don't remember the equation off the top of my
uh,
head, but we were able to look at that.
I forget you were an
And
engineer at one point in time too. So
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
did you have to deal with math as an engineer, civil engineer?
No, but the numbers were so deep, so I just apply it to everything. Yeah,
Well, of
we
course, yeah.
did. Yeah, exactly. But no, we didn't do any account. But I've taken an accounting class like in the master's program, stuff like
Like
that.
I mean, your eyes started glittering, like getting like
Yeah.
it started twinkling in your eyes. Like, did they do a lot of math? Because
I
he's getting excited
I
about
love math. Don't
it.
forget, I
You,
teach math and science.
okay, there
Yeah, I
we
still
go.
love and math.
There we
I
go.
love math is
It's the
way above
language of the
science for me.
universe. It's the
Exactly.
language of the universe.
So the other thing that we were able to do that I thought was really cool was I we talked about what it would take to from like now from zero to save up $500,000 if you were investing in say a mutual fund. And I read
With an
that
average growth
on
rate of
average,
something. Yeah,
right, 8%,
yeah,
whatever, because 4% be low, 12% be high, that kind of thing.
right.
And so we looked at that, and so we looked at it from a couple different scenarios. Say you had a lump sum, I don't know, you sold something, you got $30,000, you put that down, and then you would have put 1,500 in month over month for the next. And so we talked about the rule of 72. So we talked about so here's the cool thing. Oh, I know I'm everywhere, but here's the cool thing that we found. We found that if you were to save up, I think it was, yes, it was about $500,000, and you had that in a mutual fund. Honestly, if you could live off of, let's say, uh $50,000. If you could take $50,000 out of your mutual fund every
Mm,
year and say you had a little extra income or something,
mm.
literally you would have enough to that mutual fund replenish itself year
Oh
on
yeah,
year. So in
yeah,
another year, you would have replenished that and have your five hundred
yes,
thousand dollars again.
yes,
And so
yes.
it's interesting because growing up, folks always say, like my dad and different people, when they talk about people that made a lot of money, professional athletes, whatever, they say, well, they got enough money, if they just invested, they can live off the interest. And we hear that, but $500,000 is a very reachable number.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
right,
But I think it's so elusive when we don't understand those concepts. And you
right.
always talked about that compound interest. How that works, man. So that was fascinating, I think, and I think it really motivated some people because
Right.
I gave them a scenario for us getting there, no matter where we are, paying off debt and getting, let's
To a
say,
base.
yeah, and getting there in 15 years. That's what I got. I said, so if you're 45 now, at 60, you can make this $500,000 mark. Because folks talk about, what you want to retire at some point. But I thought
Yes.
it was fascinating that we were able to look at our numbers and say, oh, we can do this. We can
Yeah.
get to that mark by
Yeah.
60 and live off interest with whatever extra income we got coming in, like you said, multiple streams of income. But we can have $50,000 to pull from every year that we don't have to work for or whatever.
That's right. And
Yeah.
that's ultimately what people use the expression passive income, which is misleading because passive income is not passive. You have to work to build it. As you know, with your business, you're working to build it. And
Right.
so if it gets a following and it starts putting some checks into your bank account, this, that, or whatever, that you put in the work to get there, you
Right.
say. And so that's
Right.
why, people can be a little dismissive of celebrities or athletes and stuff, saying, oh, well, they got made so much money and all that, but they really put in the work to get there.
Right.
You
Right.
know, some
Yeah.
did have a leg up by having others go before them, But also too, that happens in real life, out in the real world. Sometimes you're struggling to find that job out of college. You don't, you're taking whatever job you can because you're burdened down with student debt.
And
But
and it oh
and
go.
you just happen to meet somebody that like takes a liking to you, and they say, "Hey, come by, apply for this job." Again, somebody's reaching out to help you out. You know, it's when it's abused, that's when it's a bad thing.
Right. And really though, what you're saying, here's to me kind of the great equalizer. Like you said, you've got people that can, that may help someone get a job. Well, you've got your athletes, your um different folks that operate at a really high level that put in the work. So they were given clearly they were given talent, but they also chose to focus on that. So that they've got that sweat equity, but then
Yep.
we've got the great equalizer of just knowledge. Because I think about how um so many individuals from you got individuals, and when they are from a certain part of the spectrum of society, they may have access to levels of knowledge that others don't have access to. Even when we're talking about money, if folks are taught this stuff when they're 9, 10 years old and it's ingrained in them, they're going to have a certain advantage. So it's really, it's just a knowledge we know is the irony of it is it's the great equalizer, and it's something that we all can have, but that's where the disparities are in knowledge. And some people hoard it, other people want to share it. But the great equalizer, like even with actors, me and Ashley talked about this, actors or athletes, the reason that they were able to make it is because, as you said, somebody came before them. It was a parent or coach or somebody that said, well, you've got some talent, but if you want this, this is the way to go. So you've got your I'm gonna use Will Smith for an example, because his parents, they were, I think they were like into the arts before him, and of
Mm-hmm.
course they didn't make it to his status, but they had him in acting classes, they had him being coached, all these different things even before he became a rapper and then an actor. They had trained him, and if you look at 90% of those who are successful as athletes or actors, they had one common factor: there was a coach or a mentor that literally took them by the hand and said, okay, you got talent. Now let's develop the skill. This is the way you do it. And so many of us, we may have had talent, skill, but we might not have had somebody to go before us that could say, hey, that's what you want to do. This is the way it's done. In the
Right.
same way, a lot of us don't have access to knowledge.
And the other side of that too is it also comes down to the individual.
Mm-hmm.
Let me also say this: you do have to have at least one. This is just from my point of view. One person that believes in you, at a minimum, just one.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know if you've heard of this person before, but Mr. Larry Thornton, he wrote a wonderful book called "Why Not Win," and he recently published a graphic novel
Oh
called
wow.
"Why You Have to Live, Why Not Win." Here's the
I like
interesting thing
that.
about him: he's from Montgomery, Alabama. He grew up during the time of the civil rights. He experienced a lot of different things in his life. He didn't believe that he could achieve what he achieved in life, but I've got a copy of the book for you. And
Oh, thank you.
he is a artist. He's a successful business person. He's in the Birmingham area, but he is an example of someone that, in spite of his environment, he rose above it because he had one person that believed in him.
Right.
And that's sometimes that's what it takes. And you have to have the will and the right mindset and attitude to kind of keep pushing forward with your life and keep moving forward. And kind of, we're blessed and we're living in an age where, I feel like when Evie grows up, she's not going to experience some of the things that I did growing up. And same thing with Bishop. that, it's a lot more accepting of certain things and ways of being, a little too accepting in certain areas, but nonetheless, it is taking knowledge and applying that knowledge and accepting the opportunities of not just what you know, but also who you know. And
Right.
then once you get into that position, no matter what position it is you have to look at your wealth, your riches as a opportunity to better the future ahead of you.
Right.
And the more generous you are, the more it ends up coming back because you're living in a way that you can see more. You can see it, how
Right.
abundant and good life is.
Right. Right.
I
Right.
mean, having 3 kids, that is an abundant life, my friend.
It is, man. What's funny is as they're getting older, I find myself really able to enjoy and just stop and smell the roses, man, more often. And I can even say 2 years ago, I didn't have a whole lot of moments where I was stopping and was just like, wow, it's so beautiful. It's just such a great feeling just seeing, my kids. Like, yes, I love my kids, but it was, it's chaotic. It was
Oh
a
yeah,
lot going on.
it's
We had
survival mode.
right. We had great moments, but like now I'm able literally for pockets of time to just watch my kids and be like, wow, God, thank you, Lord.
So
This
how
is a
did you get to
blessing.
that place?
Get to that place.
Yeah,
I
how did you get
think
there?
for one, for one, definitely I think naturally with them being older and not so many demands on me. But I mean, to be honest, I have to attribute more so to um just being focused and balanced, man. More focused and balanced. You and I have talked about
Are you resting
compartmentalization.
more?
Definitely. So
Okay.
so you know how we've talked about compartmentalization, and that
Oh
term
yeah.
can be used in many different facets, but in this
Uh-huh.
in this facet, I'm referring to how I use my time. And
Hmm.
so by compartmentalizing my time effectively, it's like I'm able to give the time that's for my kids to my kids, the time that's to my work, the time that's to rest. And as I've been able to do that better and better, hence refresh, refocus, rebuild,
And
as I've
hence
been
it's a muscle.
exactly. So it is. And as I've been able to exercise that muscle, I've been able to really just embrace the time with my kids more and just enjoy life more, man, for sure.
And again, if we want to go back to what we were talking about earlier, using the principles of refresh, refocus, rebuild, what you're doing is you're tithing of your time.
Yeah.
You're setting it aside, you're compartmentalizing, you're budgeting it, you're saving it, whatever words you want to use, because we could also be saying this in Espaniola, and so, ain't nobody understand what we were saying if we use the different
Right.
words, or we could be saying it in Latin, "E pluribus unum, tempus fugit," and all that stuff. But
All
that's
right.
what that's
Stop
what it
showing
is.
out.
Yeah. What? Huh?
I said stop showing out.
Huh? What? What do you say again? But that's what it is. It's just being able to put that time aside to rest. And
Right.
that's what I encourage one of my best friends to do. He started his business up last year, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I, he's it's just him really. And I tell him all the time, you need to rest. Make sure you get some rest in. Make sure you get
Mm-hmm.
plenty of rest. So he helps out with the church, and I tell him, hey, I know you like helping out with church. That's your work, your rest, but it's also you're working. Your physical body is
Right.
working. So
Right.
make sure it's refreshing you, because once it turns into a job and you feel like it's another job, then you're
That's
not
right.
resting.
Right.
So
Exactly.
rest. You need to set aside to refresh, refocus, rebuild. You can't refresh, refocus, rebuild unless you set aside the time to do that. And
That's
that
right,
is where
man.
your whole concept of your stuff is so awesome, because it's time management.
Exactly.
We're all given
Exactly.
60 seconds in a minute. We're all given 365 days in a year. We're
Mm-hmm.
all given, let's just say, 80 years.
Right.
When I was taking my test the other day, many months ago, when you
Mhm.
start a timed test, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's
Right.
counting down to zero. And once it's over with, it's over with. Doesn't matter what else you had planned or what you're going to try to do to pass that test. Once it's over
That's
with,
right.
it's over with, and it does not stop.
Nope.
That counter on that time on test does not stop. It doesn't matter what you do. You can't push it back because it's timed.
But you know, I like that analogy because I just think of how in society the irony is everything I think we have access to, the way that our society is set up, it makes folks feel like they have more time. And when I say
Yeah,
that, I don't
yeah.
mean it literally because nobody wakes up every day says, "Oh, I have more time." But in terms of behavioral patterns, it
It
looks
gives an
like,
illusion.
yeah, it does. I mean, because um anytime there's not a sense of urgency, basically what a person's subconsciously saying is, I've got more time. You know, if you
Right.
know something's in your heart to do and you're not doing it, in essence, you're saying, I have more time. So
Yeah.
even when
And
we're
you're also
talking
saying
about,
that you're comfortable and you're safe. You remember Bird would
yeah,
always
yeah,
say as a corrective thing to us, he's like, you're too comfortable. You're too comfortable.
mm,
You're too
yeah,
comfortable. What he's
yeah,
saying is like you're wasting your own time, which is
right,
true. You are.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it starts with that sense of urgency. It's like, you know, so many people, we could do a poll. Well, you know, probably, let's be real, 90%, 80 to 90% of Americans would struggle if we did an assessment with time management, if we had some metrics to measure
Yeah.
time. Because
Yeah. It's fair.
when you talk about
There's too many distractions.
yeah, yeah. So when you talk about stress and anxiety and depression, a lot of that is reflective of where we're putting our time, you know,
Yep.
at the end of the day.
Yep.
Because if we were putting it somewhere else, as you mentioned, we would have rest and we would have things in
All
place
right.
where there's focus and balance. So we wouldn't have all that. And it's just interesting. I hope I gotta get my train of thought back again, but it is just interesting because it has to start with a sense of urgency. There has to be something for us to say, hey, you know, my time is valuable. Because my time is valuable, I'm going to start doing this. But anyway, it's just interesting because most people, I say 95% of the people are aware that they need time management and are aware that they lack some of those skills, but yet it's just this it's crazy how normal going through the motions can be. Folks can be anxious, they can be stressed, and we have this sense of normalcy, this cycle, and I mean literally it's repeated daily. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
I lost my train of thought, so I'm gonna
Well,
just
let me
I'm gonna say
pick
that.
it
Thank
back
you.
up for you
Thank
real
you.
quick. No, you're welcome. You're welcome anytime, even on a Saturday at 6:23 a.m. Central Standard Time, 7/29, 2023.
All right, don't you lose your train of thought.
Well, here's the thing that you have to really, when people have that sense of urgency with time, what they also have to build into this too is understanding that if you get too focused on the urgency, the time limit, you'll start end up saying to yourself probably, "Oh, you're wasting my time." You know,
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to
Yeah.
ever get to that place where you start
Right.
being that way all the time. There's certain
Right.
situations where you have to be very firm
Right.
with
Right.
someone, say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I just don't have time for that." But you don't need to stay in that place.
Right.
You got to
Right.
understand that you have to be generous with your time too. You have to be giving of your time because
Yeah.
we do not live on an island. We are human beings in a society.
Exactly. Well, I think,
So,
yeah.
with that, it's understanding that you have to have both truth and grace.
Right.
Have to have
Right.
both truth and grace as to make a complete balance.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Truth and grace. And to that point again, I mentioned focus and balance. So focus, the formula that I use is focus plus balance equals productivity. And
Mm.
so what we have to have, that sense of urgency is just meant to, enact something. But the thing is, what a lot of people do, let's look at New Year's or whatever. Let's look at
New Year's
resolution.
resolutions.
Yeah, so let's look at that. So what people, that's a sense of urgency, but it's a sense, a lot of times it's displaced urgency, because what ends up happening is people do good for a short period of time and then it fizzles out. So most of us can do something good for a short period of time, but we lack that skill to be consistent. So what's needed is like I said, like you were saying, is just a balanced approach. It's like my sense of urgency is more of a mindset. Like I
Mm-hmm.
know every day is days, every day is not promised, so I must value today's time. But then we have to understand within that there's something called, there's our productive things, like things we got to get done with work and our goals. But then there's the constructive things that you alluded to, such as rest, leisure. What does that look like for us? Is it reading a book? Is it watching TV? Then what are the constraints we need to set for ourselves? And so one of the things that I talk about with my training, I think is incredibly important, and ironically is probably the opposite of what it has, the opposite effect of what people would think it has the effect of. But we really want to make our lives as routine as possible. And so
Yep.
it's interesting because I know when that came to me, I'm like, wait, why would I want my life to be that routine? That sounds a little dull, but really
No,
when we make our
it's
lives routine
structured.
as possible, exactly, we enhance our lives and we're
Mm-hmm.
able to do more of the things we want to do. But I,
Yes.
I just think so many individuals are probably kind of fearful of what that looks like, and kind of uh from being that structured, that routine. But that is a major key to fulfillment.
Yes, I agree. And here's the thing: good routines and bad routines sometimes look the same,
Mm-hmm.
but you have to stretch out the timeline and understand that everybody's different, everybody's an individual. But a good routine, a bad routine, it's hard to see the difference. It's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to see the difference on certain ones. Like, for example, somebody can look rich. Two different people. They both dress the same way. One is rich in that they don't have any debt. They've got cash flow from all these different investments. The other looks rich, but they're built burdened down with debt.
Right.
You just stretch out the timeline. Great Gatsby is a by F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's a book that kind of highlights that kind of type of stuff. So it's building and understanding that routines, they are boring, but they are good for you because they give you structure, purpose, rest. And so these types of things are boring, but it's also discipline to be
It's
able to
discipline.
do it.
Exactly.
It's a
Exactly.
discipline to be able to do these things consistently. And you have to do these slowly. You can have the emotion to create the motion to get you going, but it may not sustain you. And if it doesn't sustain you, that's okay. It was to get the fuse going. I'd
Right.
rather see somebody that in cross country versus track. In track, you got to get there as fast as possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Cross country, same thing. You got to get there as fast as you possibly can. But look at the difference, the
Right.
distance difference between the two. Running in
Right.
cross country is a long way.
Right.
So you got
Right.
to be a little bit balanced and disciplined in order to be in cross country.
So one of the things that we say, and now my wife has really bought into it, and it's a very common saying, but I always say it: stay in the process. And so what ends
Mm.
up happening is, again, I'm gonna use the example of a resolution. Somebody starts it, things happen, they get discouraged, they don't see the results. Now they're out of it. Now they go through a whole year, and then next year when it's starting, they're back there again.
Right.
But a lot of times people will get discouraged, but when here's the point of having all the kind of pieces in place when we talk about routine. We understand there's this mentality that, okay, I'm not going to get it every day. And you know this, like every
Oh yeah.
day, you're just not as productive and
Nope.
as efficient as you
Nope.
may like to be.
Nope.
And you may feel a little bit of frustration sometimes, but the idea is we're in a process. But see, the thing is, I think when we lack that structure and that routine, it's probably, no, I'm going to say it's harder for people to see that. But when you
Mm-hmm.
put those rudiments into place, then you know, well, I've got something to fall back on. I didn't get it today, but let me assess why. Maybe I just needed to rest. Tomorrow, I'm going to get back on it. But when you lack those rudiments, when you lack that structure, you don't have that reference point.
And also that's why you do need other people around you
Right,
to help
right.
encourage you to get back on it. And because
Mhm.
when you stay in the process, you want to envision it like this: you're walking down a road that may be a little worn, but it's paved,
Right.
versus not walking on a road at all. If you walk on just plain earth, unpaved earth, it feels a lot rougher. That you can get off the road anytime you want to, but
Mm-hmm.
it's going to get over time. It's going to be a lot more comfortable walking on a paved road than it is an unpaved road. So it's
Right.
staying in the process is, and that's where grace is very important. We're all
Mm-hmm.
human. We're going to get out of the process. That's completely fine. Get out of the process. But if you know over time that process is going to be good for you, go back to the process.
Right.
If
Right.
you're looking at the others around you and you see there are good results from the things of staying in that process, then go back and get back into the process. And you don't beat yourself up. It's like I'm so far behind everyone. Who's to say that you can't sprint and catch up and pass them?
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
it's if you know the process is good and you know it's right, it's
Yeah.
okay that you don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, you're going to come to a choice where you're going to
Yeah.
say, "Hey, staying in this process, it actually is going to be a lot better for me than doing it the way I've been doing it."
Right.
So,
That's
which is
right,
why
man.
you'll often hear pastors say, "Hey, you know, it's okay if you don't want to do it this way, but we're here, and you may end up coming back because when it's a good way, it's a good way. You can't deny that when it's a good way."
Right. 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 Um, exactly, man. So I'll I just want to say this when you were talking. I remember I mentioned to you the other day that I was ministering on Wednesday nights, and that was just really cool.
Yes.
You brought it came to my mind when you were talking about Pastor. And but yeah, it went really well, man. The last two Wednesdays, not this past Wednesday, but the two prior Wednesdays, I was able to
You know what?
to
You need to do a
minister.
three-part series. I know what each part one, part two, and part three would be. The name of each.
Oh, refresh.
Yeah.
That's funny. The first part I could honestly say was probably refresh the vision. But it was probably a combination. It's probably refresh the vision and
Telling you, you got a
refocus the
three-part
goals.
series right there. Part one,
I
refresh.
I
Part two,
combined
refocus.
the yeah, I
Yeah.
combined the two for that first one, and
Uh-huh.
then on that second Wednesday, I did the rebuild
And
the
the
plan.
beautiful thing about being in public speaking in any shape or form is that you don't think about it, but you're basically a chef.
Yeah,
You're a word chef.
yeah,
You
for
played it,
sure.
you prepare it, you got your appetizer, you got your main course, you got your dessert. You've had a uh let's see, like a creme brulee. You know what a
Right.
creme brulee is,
Oh
right?
yeah, I love
But
creme brulee.
now you've got this guy, this artist, the chef's interpretation of a creme brulee, you know? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know
And
exactly
then
what you're
and
saying.
then but then they have the creme brulee, but there it's an Asian influence of their interpretation of the creme brulee. You see what I'm saying? That's where
That's
you can
right.
really
That's
take,
funny,
well,
man.
refresh focus build. I've heard this before. It's like, you haven't heard it like this.
They haven't heard like
And
this.
so they're thinking it's like, it's a 3-part series of refresh, refocus, rebuild. It's like, oh, well, he's going to talk about refresh. He's going to talk about refocus. He's going to talk about rebuild. The first one goes, shoom, refresh, refocus, rebuild, all in one. And then in 2, you start talking about real life events. And then 3, it get everybody talking about it. You see, there's so many different
Exactly.
ways you can carve it up.
It's so many, and it's like I was saying earlier, we've got three distinct trainings that we're doing now. To
Mm-hmm.
your point, we've got our productivity training, which
Yep.
really we tailor to working professionals, and it's really just really tailored to self-awareness for what works best for you to make you more productive. Then we've got our vision building training, which deals with vision, goals, and really implement those actions to your life. But then we've got now the results coaching that I told you is a 40-day training. And as we mentioned earlier, it goes more in depth with the finances as well. You know, it kind of is a very holistic approach to getting results. That's what that's driven, holistic results. And so so definitely, man, that's what's going on right now, man. And
no wonder why I can't get a hold of you. I'm like, God, where is he?
Yeah,
hello?
man.
Hello?
Yeah. It's just I compartmentalize so well, and probably I'm typically
Can you put me
resting.
at the top of the list? Can you
What?
put me in that
But
list?
when you are, but when you're calling me or texting me, I'm in decompression mode usually.
I don't know what your schedule is.
I know. I'm in
I don't know what it.
decompression mode, man.
Just send me back a
But
emoji,
okay,
decompress,
I can
like
do that,
something. So that way,
bro. I'll do
just
that.
one emoji, and then I'm like, okay, that's what that means. He's
I will do
decompressing.
that, James. I can do that.
That is like that takes, if you especially have a pre emoji for that. It takes at most 5 seconds. You send that back to me, it's like, okay, he's acknowledged me. And also, here's another thing that you let me know what you're doing, but also that when you send that back to me, that lets me know that you're going to get back with me.
Yeah,
Because that's all that I really care about is that you're
I
getting
got
back
you.
with me.
I
Yeah,
got you.
that you're alive. Yes, I need to know that, but yes, you will get back. It can be like a I don't care what the emoji is. It could be a poop emoji for all I care. Just something to let me know it's like, okay, he's acknowledged me. He will get back with me.
I'm gonna come up with one. I'm gonna come up with a few, and we'll code them, and you'll know
No, let's not
exactly
get
what
too
they
crazy
mean.
with it now. We
No,
just
I'm
need
gonna do
let's keep it
3.
simple. Okay, no more
Oh
than
wait,
3.
no more than 3. Okay,
No more than
I'm gonna
3.
start with one. I'm gonna start with the decompression. I'll get back with you. The one that the emoji that's gonna
Yes.
say that
Yes.
all in one emoji.
Yes.
Just
Yes.
decompressing right now. I'll
And
hit you back
that's
later.
and if you think about it from a communication standpoint, that's all that people need.
Yeah,
Sometimes if they're trying to get a hold of you, they just need to know, like, hey, I'm going to get back with you. That
yeah,
is some of the most frustrating things for people is when they feel forgotten.
yeah. And I'm like, James knows how to get with me, get to me. This is how you get to me, and it's been like this for years. You just text, and if I don't respond to text, I know you'll call, you'll leave a voicemail, and by text or call 2 or 3, I'm responding.
Yeah.
Is that not the pattern?
Yes, it is. It is the pattern.
But
It is the
no,
pattern.
I'm gonna now we're gonna enhance that my
Simplify,
response. Exactly. I'm gonna
simplify the system. Man, a little bit. Let's
make
tweak
it
it a
more
little
efficient.
bit.
Make it a little
Your
bit more
time
efficient.
management, refresh, refocus it, rebuild it. Let's rebuild it. That's what we're doing. We're in the rebuild phase right now.
Nope, not giving you that. Not giving you that for this. I'm just kidding. Not, yes, no, you're right. I give it to you. Rebuild.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you.
I will.
Thank you. This is a good way. Hey, we don't do this enough, man. This has got to be our way to. It's a good thing to do. It
Yeah,
helps kick.
it helps us. Yeah,
It
it's
helps
all.
us.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good. Well, all right, bro,
That's a
man.
pound.
Yeah, that's a pound, man. That's a pound. James and James. All right, bro. Man, have a great rest of your Saturday, man. You and the family.
May the joy of the Lord be with you, my brother.
Amen. Peace out.
Peace.
All right.